Why we learn languages. There are many reasons people choose to learn a new language, whether to keep in touch with their heritage tradition, gain a competitive advantage in career choices, or purely for the enjoyment of it. Learning new languages is associated with many desirable outcomes and various benefits. Deci and Ryan's self-determination theory is based on humanistic psychology, which maintains that human beings have the potential to live fulfilling lives when innate psychological needs are met. Self-determination theory states people have motivations and regulations which determine their behavior and identity. Deci and Ryan proposed a taxonomy of human motivation, which includes the following: A motivation, which is a lack of motivation to participate in an activity. Extrinsic motivation, which is behavior driven not by the satisfaction in an activity, but by the external rewards or consequences. Extrinsic motivation is also an umbrella term for the many regulations found within the theory. External regulation states people are driven by the desire for a reward or the avoidance of a consequence. These external factors are what pushes the individual to act. Introjected regulation, which is engaging in an activity to maintain self-esteem or avoid guilt and shame. Identified regulation, which is when people engage in the behavior because it is compatible with personally important goals. Integrated regulation, which states that people's behavior is integral to them and a key aspect to their identity. And finally, intrinsic motivation, which stems from engaging in an activity purely for the inherent satisfaction and enjoyment of it. Another framework posited by Gardner discussing the socio-educational model is focusing on a social-psychological perspective, which centers around individual behavior within a socio-cultural context. His model refers to the role of motivations when learning a new language. Integrative motivation refers to people wanting to completely immerse themselves within a second language community. Two major components that the model emphasizes are the attitudes towards the learning aspects, such as the environment, the teacher, or the course, and integrativeness, which emphasizes the attitudes towards the target language community. These components are both hypothesized to influence motivation during second language acquisition. In a study on language learning being conducted by Noels and her students at the University of Alberta's Intercultural Communication Lab, participants were asked to complete a questionnaire on why they chose to learn a language. The three groups participating were heritage language learners, English as a second language learners, and modern language learners. We qualitatively coded the motivations based on the basic motivations found in the SDT theory and integrative motivation from the socio-educational model. The following results were found for Dr. Noels' study. Heritage language learners were more likely to use identified, integrated, and integrative regulations when learning their heritage language. Identified regulation was demonstrated when a participant said, "It will help with traveling in the future and I can benefit with it career-wise in teaching." Integrated regulation was demonstrated when a participant said, "It, the heritage language, has not been spoken in my family for a few generations. I am interested in reclaiming part of my cultural heritage through language." Integrative regulation was demonstrated when a participant said, "It is nice being able to travel and live in Israel and be able to understand the people." ESL learners were more likely to learn English due to external regulation, identified regulation, and an other reason. An example of external regulation was demonstrated when a participant states, "It was required for a secondary school student to study English in China." Another reason for learning English as a second language was because English is very useful in today's world. It is a worldwide language. Identified regulation learners were quoted saying, "Learning better English can enable me to study in my program more proficiently and happily." Lastly, modern language learners are also more likely to use external, identified, and intrinsic motivation. An example of a participant with external motivation said, "My interest in German is primarily academic, as it is necessary for my doctorate research." The second most likely used regulation was identified, with the participant saying, "I am interested in international law, so I suspect having a background in Spanish will be particularly helpful." And finally, modern language learners are also more likely to use intrinsic motivation, with a participant saying, "I continue to study French because I enjoyed it." According to the results of this study, though 25.9% of the responses are categorized into the other category, self-determination theory captures 74.1% of the 232 responses as to why participants are learning a language, whether they were learning their heritage language, English as a second language, or a modern language. Knowing this information can help teachers craft better courses to motivate students to learn languages, and leaves room for future theories and further research to be conducted regarding language learning. Thanks for watching! A special thanks to the Intercultural Communication Lab and Kimberly Noels. Script, video, and visuals by Binish Kayum and Yoon So Hwang. voiceover by Beanish Kayum. Please share, like, and subscribe.